I'm John Ackerman. This is Chet Miller, King of All Media Servers, Julian Chavez, who is our chief engineer, and Austin Wheeling, the man behind the button. Also from Smart Monkeys. Anyway, so we're here to talk about a case study, or as I like to think of it when contemplating this job, 20% of my work life in years.
John's early career still, as you can tell, Elvis off. I hate when the punchline doesn't make the line.
I left out the rock and roll years. That was after I had to buy a suit. I made Al Dazan a promise when I first went on the road that I would not be in rock and roll by the time I was 30, and I made it by 29 years and 4 months. I had to go buy a suit. So there you go. Anyway, so yeah, one day I got a call, and a long-term client of World Stage at the time wanted to buy a video wall for a building. Can you come to DC? Okay. So then we marched around this collection of buildings, which at the time was an assemblage of 4 buildings. And we sat down at a table, and I listened to the lead architect, Emily Emmerich, and Larry Lesser and Josh Lesser all talk back and forth about what they wanted. And it turned out that they wanted a very fancy building lobby with a big open stair with an LED wall and an active LED wall on the other side of the lobby. And oh, by the way, could you do the conference center? And oh, by the way, we're putting cameras in, it's an acquisition facility, and you have no space for control, and you have, you have to be able to have that control room work everywhere. Okay. So that started. That was in 2018. And so we were talking about how to do this, and I ran into Josh Weisberg, and he goes, you should talk to this guy, Stefan. Okay. So Infocom was coming up, and I go talk to Stefan, who started trying to explain virtual computing to me, which we moved quickly past. But they had a nice program, and it seemed like a good way to go. So off started the meeting with Smart Monkeys. And then Stefan gave me a quote that was woefully underpowered, as it turned out. But it was a number that fit in that budget. Well, it went well. It's true. And off we went. And we did some initial designs, and to a certain extent, we were given there was a great deal of belief from the Milken people and the Vision Matrix people, Larry and Josh in particular, in us executing their vision. And through thick and thin and up and down, because Lord knows Josh and I did not see eye to eye on everything, they let us build their vision for 7.5 years. And it was fun. It's not as fancy as the big Disney shows. A lot of it is pretty basic corporate stuff, but it grew and it grew and it grew. So we should probably take you through some of the fun places here. And now we have come on, there we go. This is the obligatory Michael Kohler slide. Thank you, Josh Goldberg, who was brought on late in the day to run the exhibits, and he was an old Max MSP programmer and decided that we absolutely needed a cat changing every 20 seconds in the control floor. So that was that. And really, you can't do this alone. So these are all of the people, excluding the ones I've forgotten, who worked on this thing over time and came down and did a lot. Everything from Jay Weiss working in a disaster zone, loading things in, to Dave Crook finding his people, to Joe Staffa being hired as a carpenter and turning into a great LED guy, to Matt Ward, hi, Mike wants a holodeck. A what? A holodeck. Do you have a spec? Sure. Squeeze the link to Wikipedia. How do you think we felt? You know, so we had a good, you know, it was a long, long journey. And so we built what we thought was the most cool place going. The audiences have told us no, by the way. But this is actually one of the harder spaces. This space has, the upstage wall is LED, amber 1.5 row if you need a plug. The ceiling is megapixel Kelvin. What you see here is Chet's work, because one of the things that there was no room for was actual house lights. So Chet developed house lights on the LED. And the side walls are projection, and it is always good to use Beta products. That is 12 Titan. They weren't in the country when they were spec'd digital projection MLS machines that have been an opportunity in upgrading. And their least reliable part, sorry, Governor, is the Raspberry Pi. Anyway, so it's good to use Beta product and evolve. To this, and maybe this is a good time for Austin to speak, you've collected a significant breadth of devices in this one room. This is just like the last panel here.
Yes. So, the control for these across like this is a theater, but there's not a traditional control booth in the back of the room. One of the requests was to have all sorts of control hidden from any public-facing view. So for this room, for example, we have different UIs that the ghosts can use during the museum's operation, where they just hit a few buttons and it shows, and we control devices from ads, different UIs that inside of ISIC. Lots of monitoring and health, lots of fun projectors to monitor.
Yeah, and I actually, and now this is a good point, because on that list of names, Alex Bright was missing. And Alex came and did a cameo where he color balanced megapixels LED, rose LED, and the aforesaid projectors. Beautifully, I might add. So thank you, Alex. And what Austin is talking around, this room has two modes. It has the, what I call the corporate propaganda mode, or the museum mode, where you have absolutely not one technical bone in the body in that room. And it's push one button on the iPad, and off you go. It also has a fully staffed control room mode where everything can be individually controlled and run like a traditional meeting from the 7th floor 2 buildings away. Because why wouldn't you put your control space there? And don't worry, there are no elevators you can use that go to that floor. You have to take an elevator, walk over to a fire stair, up the stairs, have an access key, get in through the door, and move on, because that is the most efficient way to get your crew in and out of a control room. But that was not the focus of the space, and yet it works. You know, it all actually works. This space, we have a couple of video walls in the bottom. This is another signature space that is part of, it's the Rockwell, the lab at Rockwell did this tree. This is the 1200 panel OLED tree with a base of screaming Cisco switches. It's true. They did pad them down a bit. A couple of LED walls down in the bottom. You can see into some spaces out there. It's lovely, stained glass. It's a very technological room in spite of its overall look.
Well, there's also, You can see it in this room as well. There's the two glass panels, which are actually LED displays,
Ben stuff, yeah.
which are worth shouting out. So you have bottom panel here, and then on the next slide, you see a wraparound panel that does the same thing, which was made by our friends at 510 and just absolutely lovely. You also have the word cloud above in the ceiling, which is kind of a waste of space, but I'm not allowed to say that.
No, but 510 did prove that the floor was not level. Mind you. But and anyway, so both of this tree and the word cloud and the railing are cross-linked in that there are takeover modes. So they have, again, completely standalone exhibit modes from DNP and their own developers, and they can be combined with the event system for an integrated look across all of their surfaces, which was not simple. And in this room, again, you have another megapixel controlled LED wall there, and that one's a Create LED 1.2 MIP. The couch, well, the less said about that carpet and couch, the better. Here, this is the LED wall. We need an obligatory shot of the first LED wall put in, except this isn't it because it was replaced before we opened. So the first two LED walls that were put in well too early by our friend Jay Weiss and Jeff Gottesfeld and Jeff Wong and all that team did not make it to opening. They were all pulled out and replaced with a much more modern LP wall that was approximately 1/3 the heat level, which solved a lot of problems in the lobby because Leontronics did not meet their operating specs and were too hot all the way through, which drove everybody crazy. We were saved slaying at that because someone conveniently cut all the control lines to the air conditioning behind that wall on the stair before they opened, so the aircon never worked properly. They did also put the ceiling at the wrong height, so we had to take a row off the top of the wall, and the lights were wrong, so they ripped that whole ceiling out for the art piece next to it. But it went beautifully. When we retrofit it, we actually fit in the space that was left over the first time, which was good. Yeah, it's just the way. This is another megapixel wall, Andy. And this one's this one's 8 meters by 12 meters in the middle of a lit atrium. And we struggled with this wall, right? Because this is the one during the run-up to this job where we met with Mr. Milken in Los Angeles, and we cleared out a giant space in the warehouse there. And we mocked this wall up with CB5, and we moved seats back and forth to simulate him and the family watching movies. And he was worried about the top of this, and of course, this is not exactly a movie-shaped wall. Don't worry about it. You know, so there you go with that. And this is another feature of Mr. Milken's ode to absolutely no control space. What you see across the bottom here is acoustic panels that hide all of the electronics and the subwoofers. We also just stuck speakers because we were not allowed. We asked if we could put speakers out where we could point them at the people, and we were told no. So, it's true. So we went and put in some KRA pythons, and we were just going to put them down at the bottom, and the architect said, no, you have to have that black line go all the way up. So we have 9 fake KRA pythons at the top with all the guts taken out, and only the bottom ones work. And we were still not allowed to tilt them back, to angle them down at all. And we thought about trying to use steerable speakers, and we couldn't find a steerable one that worked that was thin enough. I mean, even 6 inches was too much. We did not have the space. So.
That acoustic paneling is very much like the LED wall is off, and probably once a week I would say, oh no, we lost the bottom tiles. We never lost the bottom tiles.
No. It is a great dust magnet, though. Do not look at that wall with the wall off. Let me just say that. Great room, though. People like that room, and they are. And I was talking with Mark, who's running the space. They are actively scheduling meetings in that space, echoey and all. They love it. And the fun part about that wall is you notice on the left-hand side and the right-hand side glass, it is also viewed from the side all the way up its height, because you have office floors left and right. Which is why we chose Kelvin, really, because the main viewing floor is so low, the fact that Kelvin has randomized the LEDs saved us from the color shift. And when you have people standing right next to the wall looking across it, that same feature, we are very color consistent on that wall. Don't do numbers. And now we have the ending piece, which is the holodeck. And I think we should let Julie tell us all about the holodeck.
Okay.
And the associated craziness, right? And we'll get to the 7th floor at some point. But
Yeah.
people like the holodeck.
Yeah.
It's the only thing they can charge for in the whole place.
Yeah, the holodeck was an add-on, as was most of this project over the past 8 years. It went from conference rooms to, as you've seen, that atrium didn't exist when we started. The theater was dirt. They dug it all out. Yeah, it was kind of an evolution, as you could imagine. And the holodeck was, you know, Mike Milken waking up one day and saying, hey, it would be cool if I owned one of those things, right? Like, can you just make me a holodeck? Which we proceeded to, you know, try to create that vision. So we partnered with Moment Factory and Disguise on this one. Space constraints were definitely a thing here. This was a very tight area that we were given to make this work. So all of the products that we used, you know, LED-wise, were played into that. Also, all of the automation that happened, there's kind of this first room that you walk into, and it's all interactive with LiDAR sensors, and it's a show because it's, you know, a kids museum too, so the kids have to interact with the doors once you unlock the holodeck, or the dream machine they call it.
The dream machine.
The doors automatically open, and then you're presented with the holodeck itself, and you walk in, and there's about maybe a 20-minute show that happens there. But yeah, these were some of the racks here. Chet could probably speak more to that about what we're using on the media server side, but yeah.
Yeah, so the way that we approached this building was really interesting because we kind of approached it as 2 completely separate systems. All of... I do a lot of rounding in my head. It's like taking a square and just sanding it down until there's a curve. In my mind, it's 2 systems just because we have a massive vertex stack and we have the disguise stack for the holodeck. So almost every screen in the space, other than the holodeck itself, is driven through a vertex cluster, which, well, multiple vertex clusters, and that was a whole R&D project for ourselves that was really rewarding, really challenging, and worked out to be quite nice. I think one of... It got me 20-sided tavern, which was great, and I'm happy to do a D&D show controls show anytime. If you're looking for a D&D show control programmer, I'm very available. And very qualified, as it turns out. But one of the things that I had a thought for that, and now it's totally gone. Oh, shit. I'm vamping when it comes back.
Well, here, we can cool the people.
Oh, there we go.
There we
That
go.
room is freezing. I had to carry long pants because it was also a active construction site, so they made me wear not shorts during the summer there as we were programming it for most of the year. I think that up until recently, I spent more time in room 810 in the River Inn in DC than I had in my apartment in Chicago, which was a first for me because the hotel kept putting me in the same room. Worked out great. But it was really There's a lot of very rewarding pieces to it and a lot of very frustrating pieces to it, but in the end, everything we learned was really beneficial for future work and looking at how we can approach large-scale systems that all live on the same network. I was a little bit nervous because we architected everything so that all the vertex stacks lived on the same VLAN, and I wasn't sure if that was going to work, and actually it worked out swimmingly and was impressively reliable. I don't particularly like having more than one project stack running on a VLAN. With this, it was absolutely not an issue, which means that I can access all of them through the VPN, which has been very good for both on-site and my remote troubleshooting. And my favorite way to troubleshoot something now is in my bathrobe from my desk. So enjoy that mental image next time you call me for support.
Yeah, so I'm blinding the audience with our, this is what we built to introduce the exhibits team to the existing network, convincing them that maybe they shouldn't just do their own thing. And it's actually bigger than this now. We built this about a year ago, and there's, oh, look at that. It's not my computer.
We have a question from the audience.
Yeah, really. Anyway, this was the product of making this thing run on structured cabling, as they call it in the building industry, and essentially forcing everything to Ethernet in 2018 in AV was a little forward-thinking, I mean, 2110 was not a thing, right? The big deal was how to get video where we wanted it to go. And so I went to, it was actually ISE, and I was looking around it, and I talked to ZV, and they ignored me. And I talked to Aurora and IDK, and both of those guys sent stuff to the shop, and the IDK stuff just worked. And it was great. We're still at the 2 video wall in the conference room. We have maybe 50 endpoints. Great. Well, as this project evolved, VLAN 268 there got a little busy. So we're over 500 endpoints, and IDK has rewritten their software twice to support the size of this installation. I think this was Julian's, this was the bane of your existence for quite some time.
Yeah, I think so, because again, starting out with such a small system that has expanded, it was a challenge, but I think we pushed the manufacturer and the client pushed us. So I think that was a good partnership there. And I think that working with the right manufacturers and choosing the right product early on really allowed us to just, say yes to everything. I think once more displays were requested and installed, it wasn't a big deal. It was just, okay, add a couple more endpoints and we're good, expand the system. Our backbone could handle it. Their software could not. They fixed that. And then eventually it did. It was able to handle it.
I mean, those 3 center links run a lot of bits.
Yeah, definitely.
We're running 400 and 500 megabits of video up and down them all the time, which in the 2110 world is not that bad. Not that many, but back in the day. The other thing interesting here, I don't know, Austin, if you can speak to it, because you were part of the discussions with Paul and I when we were talking about how to address all these different zones within the space and how to deal with that on audio.
Yeah, we have a pretty interesting workflow with audio and getting audio. So like we said, we have these L7 control rooms. So for each of the zones, they're able to mix from L7. So we have a whole QSys infrastructure. We're actually using 6 separate QSys cores. We have an L7 core that kind of manages each individual zone's core, and then we use QLAN streaming to get that audio that's getting mixed from the L7 room and actually send it over the network to the specific zone, and then through that zone's particular QSys core. And we've programmed it in a nice way to where it actually hits the same output processing that the normal exhibits were, so they don't have to do as much tweaking except for right on the console. Yeah, it's a little bit of a spaghetti to get there, but it works very well.
It's a solar system where you have QSys as the sun, and then you have all of the Dante zones as the planets, right? 'Cause
Yes.
nothing travels through Dante outside of its zone. Everything passes through the sun to get back out.
Exactly. Yeah, so if we have local Dante networks at each zone, and then if to go out, use QLAN to get to L7.
And that's only because QLAN has not convinced everyone to put QSIS into their own box.
Right.
Dante caught on too early. And then on the video side, we benefited from being a 7-year project as well. We did, when we started, we sat down, the very first design we did, we were having arguments with ourselves about budget and constraints. And we came up with a 4A design as a nod to Barry Grossman. And we submitted that, and it came back too expensive. Okay. We then re-engineered the whole thing in black magic. We are not black magic people. We said, fuck it. Sorry for the recording. We're doing it in Ross. And so we sent them the most expensive thing in Ross, and we thought we were over-engineering it at the time, and we put an FR5, their biggest frame, filled to the max, and they said, yeah, that's it. That's great. Add 7 more rooms. Add the 7th floor control room, where we went from having one agile little control room to deal with 3 spaces on 2, to being able to support 4 large control rooms, 3 individual acquisition stations, and 13 what we call flex desks, which are assignable to any control infrastructure. So now we have the FR12.
Yeah, I think it was cool to work on this project for so long too, because we were actively reiterating every time a new product was released, which was really exciting for me because the client was on board, we were on board. I don't know why, I mean, you seem to agree with my ideas, but I always like to kind of try to spec the newest, latest, and greatest thing, even if it's not proven yet. So the FR12 being that, it was, you know, it worked out well. We had to add an entire control floor for acquisition at the end of the day. Those pictures we showed earlier on, all those spaces, they needed to be able to be taken over for presentations. So everything flowed back into our central production suite, with the FR12 being the home for that. And over time, they'd released carbonite blades for that. We threw those in. They released Mod X fiber blades for that. We threw those in. And everything kind of just naturally progressed, which was great. We still had the FR5 from the original design 5 years later. We just put some tie lines in, added a BCS control system so that they all function as one router now. So everything kind of just came, you know, together in that sense.
We evolved well.
Yeah, I think we did. And it was interesting because of their request of anything, anywhere, whenever. And that was the same problem that we experienced for the control floor as well. They didn't want to say, okay, this room is for the theater, this control room is for the atrium. They were like, okay, well, this room has windows, and if that's the only show going on that day, I might control all the shows from that one control room. So that was another challenge for us because we needed to be agile in that respect, which is where Smart Monkeys came in as well. And we were able to, you know, reroute things on the fly, have that control room up and running in seconds with all of the sources and destinations for whatever, you know, acquisition room we were looking at. So I think that was an interesting problem to solve there as well.
Credit to Austin. I mean, you know, he got tired of me telling him I want that on one button. But it works, so which is really good. You know, and we do owe, you know, Chet made reference to our great struggle in terms of determining where to go in media server land, right? Because the first media servers on the stairs also met the fate of the stairs LED wall, except that they broke. They were VX4s with serial numbers less than 10. You know, they were very early product, and they did not have a good life.
They're still in a rack there, by the way. We use them to store content.
Yeah, we use the shells. But they performed for a while. anyway, so we were sitting there researching, how do we do this, where do we go, what do we do? And we met Jan, and Jan gave us a little presentation from Vertex. And, you know, we got some programs in, and Andy Babin, who was with us at the time, was taking the lead, and he was emailing poor Martin and Jan every day, you know, because he, of course, wanted it to run like a lighting console. As do you. So at the end of a long process, we opted to go with Vertex, and I think I'm not. There was a lot of development that happened across that time, simultaneous with the garden, and when push came to shove, we ended up walking away from our original Vertex server design into a zoned, sort of a geography-based, standalone primary backup director, multiple actors, shared understudies world. You want me to be closer to that? Okay. It's not my computer. So, and that structure, Chet, has proven to be pretty
Yeah,
stable.
it's been very robust and
Yeah.
so far very stable. I think from my point of view, the thing that was very fascinating with this entire process was we swapped out the entire disguise system we swapped out the entire Vertex system from a couple disguise servers. A cost savings measure, we were at
5 disguise servers, 24 Vertex.
Yeah.
But that cost metric allowed us to do it, because you might be surprised to know that there were still the occasional budget constraints. $30 million later, and in a cautionary tale, which every media server company will tell you here, we are still working with the manufacturer of those boxes on resolving issues with hard disks and speed and stability. We have 2 generations of machine from that manufacturer. Generation 2 is solid as a rock, and there is not one difference in brand component between Gen 1 and Gen 2, and they are all premium. Gen 1 does not like life at all. From blue screens to I won't let you have a RAID card to exactly 4 hours. Gen 1 is a lemon like there is no lemon. But there you go. We think we are at this point about 2 tests away from a solution that should get us to at least some level of complete stability, we hope. Okay, there's one doubter in the audience. Anyway, questions, if any? We've stunned you into silence? Thank you, Herrick.
I've sort of watched you and some other people go through this, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing down there? I'm curious about the scope and the mission creep and how you dealt with client management, and also.
We did not manage the client.
Okay.
We were completely reactive.
Right, but also.
We didn't tell them.
So it just shows up on a bill somewhere?
No. We budgeted. We did have discussions that hardware is hardware. You know, every piece of hardware has 2 jobs. One is to do what you bought it for, the other is to break. And they all have limited life. Now, these guys have a real business, right? They run foundations and banks, they make they move and manage billions of dollars. And they understand whatever the word is missing me right now, but schedules where things expire, right? You run your computers for 3 years, depreciation, basically. And this thing is now, you bought it in 2018. You installed it in 2020. It's now 2023. It's 5 years old, and for a great period of that time, it was sitting in granted, a very fancy MDF with hot aisles and cold aisles, and 3 sets of crack units, all of which broke on a regular basis. And that room got up to 100 degrees, and then it got down, and then it got rained on, and then it, you know, it did. And and in a stroke of great luck, when it rained, it cleverly poured water on the IT side, not on the AV side. And we were very lucky. But, so the IT guys went to the mat and went to the insurance and did the whole 9 yards and ripped out all their old Cisco stuff and put in 5 years newer Cisco stuff. And they were like, maybe you should replace the servers. We're like, okay, it's a good idea.
Thank you. We won't ask again. There was a lot of client trust, which I think was best emblematic by the fact that they kept hiring our crew from us.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is amazing from a support point of view. Sam Krimmelmeyer, who I was so excited to finally work with on the show, we spent 2 weeks working together, and then they made an offer to him to work there full time.
I know. Well, they made the offer day 2, actually.
I'm exaggerating in the wrong direction.
You are. Well, he had to think about it, you know, for his own reasons.
But they also hired Mark out from under, well, not out from under us, but kind of out from under us.
And Kate.
And it was a really smart move on their part because these people know the systems very well.
Yeah. This is I mean, it's a cautionary tale, but one that's true. Most of our clients will not hire their operating staff anywhere near early enough. This is a recorded first. Granted, they stole them from us, but they did hire them early enough. You know, so to your client management, oh, go ahead, Anoop.
I was going to ask about just IT management and networking and what was the integration.
You are familiar with the good fences make good neighbors technology? We had meetings early on with Doug and Jose, and Milken IT is very high paranoia. I mean, to the extent that there are individual locks and cameras on the front of every rack. There's card IDs to get into the doors, right? And we said early on, this is the AV system. This is not your core business. Yes, it's Ethernet, but no, it is not corporate IT. And 2 overworked guys thought that was a really great idea so that they wouldn't have to deal with it. And in that space, we have our own IP set assigned at the ISP level, right, for internet access and support. We have a bone dry VLAN and SSID from them to get up into the infrastructure. We did not duplicate the Wi-Fi throughout the building, right? So we have a totally clean VLAN SSID that just come back to all our servers for authentication, IP addresses, et cetera. So there's a really big Chinese wall between us. All right, well, if there's nothing else, thank you all. Yes, Josh? Not alone. Well, Well, that's true.
And also didn't do safety things. There's the Chet Miller Memorial hole that I fell in that I'm
There's
still
that, yeah.
a little bitter about.
But you know, you stuck with it, and you know, I think you know the stamina and the patience and the wisdom that was required that all you guys did, and some of the other folks in the room did, is really quite amazing because you walk through the space and God damn it, the thing works. Holy
Yeah.
cow, you sit in the theater and this silly LED ceiling that we thought was, why are you going to do that? And the projection mapping on the walls and the multi-channel sound system and everything, it, geez, it works. And, you know, you can argue the message that they are putting out there, but
And we will.
and you know, I just applaud you guys and gals for working through all the problems and coming up with
Yeah.
something unique.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've skipped over some spaces too, guys. There is more if you ever get there. We have a 3D LiDAR space. We have sneeze walls. We have, you know, 6 camera acquisition rooms. You know, there's stuff. Did anybody ever count the racks?
More than
Yes, Erica.
This being the project that felt like it would never end, but it has. And most of the projects.
No, it
that-
hasn't.
Well,
I have
okay.
emails.
It has opened. Most of the projects that we work on don't get to be this long and ever evolving. What is the biggest takeaway or learning that you feel like you can apply from this project to other future projects?
Run. No. Well, listen to the client. If I had not sat at that table and said nothing, which is hard for many of you to believe, for 4 hours, and I just let them talk. And we were at the end of the day, and Larry Lesser looked at me and he goes, "You haven't said anything all day. What do you think?" And I basically repeated what they had been saying back to them for the day in a somewhat more concise form. And that was that. You know, off and running we went. And there were, you know, I mean, the exhibit designers were like Spinal Tap drummers. I think we had 5 of them come and go before they settled on the winners. There was a great debate where they got fed up with their lead architect, Sharon Baranis. And they, you know, Emily was on the chopping block. And they survived that, but they then hired design architects to redesign the second floor. They brought in OTJ to do the other spaces. You know, we had our own moment when they built out the 6th floor owner's space. They were trying to get us to sign a traditional fixed price contract, which with this client is a dumb idea. And they didn't want our design fee, and they didn't that. So they went and hired another contractor, and the project manager who put that in was working to a time and a budget and mercilessly cut it. And we are, to this day, working with Mark at Milken, repairing the shit show that they put in, right? There's an entire floor up there that really just needs to be completely repulled and rebuilt, we're working around it. We worked around it prior to opening. I mean, I basically extended our network up. We pulled a couple of different cables. We added switches. We added technology to the floor just to get to frickin' opening. And it's band-aided, not documented, and used every day.
There's something that I go back to, which is something I take from almost every job I do, and that is surround yourself by smart people and surround yourself by people
Yeah.
you want to be around. Like, even in this room, I'm friends with all of these people. Alex came out to help us. We never overlapped, unfortunately, because our skill sets are overlapping too much. Erica came out to hang out with us. But one moment in particular really sticks out for me, and that is going into the inauguration, because we got to be there for the Trump inauguration, which I have thoughts about, but will not be recorded today.
No.
But as we were going into that, they said, oh, well, we may need a Malumin operator. And I immediately said, Max can do Malumin. Let's book Max. And I just made it happen because we didn't know if we'd actually need a Malumin operator, but what we needed was Max in the room, because Max is a joy of a human. And that weekend killed us. It was long hours, it was rough, it was moments of very bad shows, but we had one more person who I would do anything with, and he would come in with a smile, and I said, things are okay.
Well, and he got to educate people on what a timeline was. Where's the folder? Max can tell you that story. Yes. Okay. You'd have to find it.
Talk to me about working with the creatives.
I have to, I will absolutely tell you that in both Freethink, who did the theater, and I promised I would say this, and they created, their goal, which they succeeded at, was to create an incredibly dope and cinematic experience. And that is credited to Deanna Krug, and I have it in writing in case you think I made that up. They were amazing in terms of the care, right? They had an environment that they had never worked in before. They were used to working in one screen, and they were completely flipped out when they found out they had a screen and a ceiling and 12 other surfaces, 8 other surfaces, 12 projectors. And they went and did any number of test shots. They also were not familiar with LED. They came in and we sat down and had video review parties in the lobby on that lobby wall, right? So that they could see what their work looked like on LED. It was amazing. So, and they did suffer from the word final. I believe we had about 10 or 12 final versions, but in all seriousness, they kept getting better, so fine. On the other hand, upstairs, Moment Factory, early on in the thing, there was a very tenuous relationship with Moment Factory because of the fact that Moment Factory was hired by a group that had nothing to do with the operations group. They were the museum group. So there was this tension of, you know, we're hired to get to this combined end, but no one's ever talked to anyone else, and no requirements were passed, and half the stuff that we thought was completely baked in, done and dusted was a complete surprise to them, right? And so I asked Genevieve, I said, well, so what did you guys do to get this job? And she said, nothing. We got it on reputation. It's true. And they did absolutely none of the interactive discussions with us about pretty much anything that Freethink was doing, and they went their own way. And we had, because of the separation of church and state, this was a huge budget mess, because the two groups had kind of forgotten that they needed to budget for gear and software and LED, and that the budgets were just not right. And everything got budgeted except the media server system. And there was a giant debate on how they were going to do it, and were they going to do it in Vertex and Pixera or Disguise or something else, or do it all in Unreal, or, you know, and Moment Factory said nothing publicly to us. And they kept coming back and back and back to Disguise for some reason, whatever. And I mean, I know why they kept going back to Disguise, because all of their freelancers know how to program in Unreal Disguise, which has a funny ending, which we'll get to in a minute. But the budget, Disguise was $1 million more. And Nico from Moment Factory sat down with Peter from Disguise and made a backroom deal on what this was going to cost. That was only $350,000 over budget, which MCAD agreed to. And then, as we moved through, we need LiDAR sensors, okay? We'll add LiDAR sensors. You want 3D, 2D. They want 2D to save the money. All right, great. You have your own program. Oh, yeah. You know, it's a lot of LiDAR sensors. And it was a whole thing. And so I said, well, we would use stage precision. I said, that's a great idea. I said, can you put stage precision in? Now, of course, they had no budget, so we had to sneak both Nate and stage precision into the budget. And then, you know, and it was just one thing after another. And we started out of self-preservation looking at how we were going to map the content into the Disguise rig that they had agreed with Disguise on. We had nothing to do with it. And Chet was doing all this work, and he's on the phone with me. His hair was falling out, basically. It's not fitting. And we went, I don't know, how many rounds did you go with Nico on that? 15, 20, at least?
It's a long time.
And at the end of it, guess who programmed the Disguise? Not Moment Factory, Chet. Yeah, talk about a budget flim-flam there, too. But, you know, it worked out. And they, you know, at the end of the day, they built some content that people really like, and it works well. You know, I mean, it was an interesting path. And after greeting them and being very tentative, we're kind of very sorry to see them go.
I think we're at time.
Okay.
So let's give it up for these guys.